Hello everyone, my name is Josh, and this is Whimsical and Interesting Musings. Sorry for the slight darkness. This is currently being filmed at 5 o'clock. It's just gone 5 o'clock. And today, this is Whimsical and Interesting Musings, and today I'm going to be resuming with my overview of Inside Number 9 with Series 5. And the first episode in this lineup, this is actually quite an interesting season to break down because this particular season aired in 2020, and this was at the start of the pandemic. So a lot of these episodes, even though they probably were filmed before the pandemic happened, like 2019 or early 2019 or something like that, it does give you sort of like this feel that a lot of the episodes tend to be very well contained, and it gives you that very COVID-friendly, in a very bizarre way, a very COVID-friendly type idea, which is, of course, something that Steve Pemberton and Reece Shearsmith talked about when they were doing their podcast, Inside Number 9, which you can watch on YouTube. Just look up Inside Number 9 commentary, and you'll basically find a whole entire list of all the episodes they've pretty much talked about and broken down and discussed. And it's very interesting to see from a writing perspective, because I'm a writer. I've published 2 videos now in which I showcase some of my work. And if you want to see those videos, I'd recommend hitting the subscribe button and giving a few likes, because they're great videos and I had a great time recording them. But on with the episodes, and the first episode is called The Referee. The Referee is a Wanker. And this particular episode, first of all, great title, it's hilarious. But this episode basically follows a group of referees played by Shearsmith, Pemberton, and an actor called David Morrissey, and an actor called Ralph Little. And he is an actor who, if you are a fan of the Royal Family, he was in that. He played Anthony, the youngest, and often, put upon, and often, quite, seriously, bossed around. He's kind of almost treated like a servant. He's not, treated very well. And he's kind of almost like the joke of the family. And he's pretty funny in that. And of course, he starred alongside in that with Sheridan Smith, who later went on with him to play his wife in the television series 2 Pints of Lager and a Packet of Crisp. And they're both great together. They have great chemistry. And of course, Sheridan Smith, for those of you who don't know. And of course, if you're an Inside Number 9 fan, you obviously, know her as Christine Clark in the episode The 12 Days of Christine. And this particular episode is pretty good. It also has David Morrissey, who a lot of people would be surprised to know he played the governor in The Walking Dead. And I literally was quite surprised when I found out he was British, because he did such a great southern accent, so that when he actually it was revealed that he was British, I was like, oh, he's British, like, good on you, mate. But yeah, he's in this, and he plays a referee who is on the verge of retirement, and he decides to play one last game before he retires. But it's a pretty difficult game because the team that he is basically meant to oversee and look out for is up against a team in which his boyfriend is playing for. And he doesn't want to come across as biased, but then he also doesn't want to let his boyfriend down. So he kind of feels like he's in a little bit of a loggerheads, and that's really an interesting idea to play with from the perspective of any episode, not just an Inside Number 9. Just having you could do an entire series on just this concept alone, like the idea of being a referee and being that type of referee who has a certain bias with a particular team, and the difficulties they have to face when it comes to going out on the pitch and all these other things. But it also discusses homophobia in the game of football, and I'm actually quite glad that Steve Pemberton and Reece Shearsmith made the main character of Steve Morrissey an openly gay man, and he was a man who basically had to struggle with the fact that he's a referee, and he's basically got a job where he's not meant to be liked, and he also has a kind of secretive, at first, relationship with another man who is a football player, and a very well played football player. And I actually really like the fact that this particular episode focused on homophobia in football, because football's been guilty of a lot of things. Football's been guilty of racism and homophobia, sexism, and all these other things. But now, hopefully, touch wood, we are now starting to move past all of that, and various other things are starting to come to the forefront, like with the women's football team, the English football team particularly, winning the game. Well done, ladies. Fantastic job. You did a wonderful, wonderful job, and I'm looking forward to more, great developments in terms of, the game just being more openly accepted and more inclusive, because that's one of the things that I really hated about football initially, like the idea that football doesn't tend to really open the doors for a lot of people. They tend to be quite, specific, and there is a history behind that. And if you are interested in the history of football and how it got started, it's a highly dramatised version. But I'd recommend the Netflix show The English Game, which was created by Downton Abbey's very own Julian Fellows, and it's a fantastic series. I'd highly recommend it. And if you want to see me do a review of said show or mini-series, I would I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and let me know in the comments. But yeah, this is a great episode because it delves into a lot of interesting topics about being a referee in football, and it's just an interesting concept. Again, there's a theme with this particular series where every episode feels like it could be its own series in its own right. Like, all the episodes have this certain feel of either the actors saying, I could do a full series of this, or the writers saying, we could do a full series of this idea if we wanted to. Like, there's so many ways in which you could look at these episodes. They always have this kind of, it's almost like it's purposely written to have continuations, and I think that's really fantastic. So it's really great. The episode is also just really funny, and there is a twist, and it is a twist that I actually thought, oh, it's kind of predictable, but it was good. It was it was a fun twist, and it's not a dark episode. Thank God we finally got, a Inside Number 9 episode that's to do with football, and it isn't completely brutal or violent or crazy. Thank you, Steve Pemberton and Reece Shearsmith. This is a great episode, and I'd highly recommend it. That is The Referee's a Wanger, and it's episode 1 of series 5. The next episode is a special one, because if you are a fan of the show Psychoville, which is the previous series that Steve Pemberton and Reece Shearsmith created, you're going to love this episode. I certainly did, because this episode is fantastic. It follows David and his mum, Maureen. It first starts off with a couple one of whom is played by Jenna Coleman, and she plays Betty, and she is engaged to a man named Sam, played by Kadif Kerwin. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. I do apologise if I butchered the pronunciation of the surname there. They play a couple who has just moved into a new flat, and they are starting to experience a lot of weird things, especially Jenna Coleman's character of Betty. She is basically experiencing a lot of, weird activity going on, and she is relaxing one night, and then she hears a knock at the door, and she opens it to see that it is David, played by Steve Pemberton. And David is a character who is a bit weird in Psychoville. He has a really odd obsession with serial killers, to the degree where he would actually, religiously orchestrate quizzes and get mementos and have quotes from serial killers and things like that up on his wall, or he'd quote serial killers often a lot. So he's a pretty weird guy, but he's kind of a bit slow, and he's kind of naive as well. So there's that element of likability to that aspect of him as well, which is really weird. And him and his mum are the worst, but they are also the funniest parts of Psychoville. There's even a particular episode of Psychoville where it's basically taking place all in one room, and it's just them basically trying to get rid of the evidence and trying to cover their tracks. And there's even a famous scene where they do the Superman dance, comb your hair, clap your hands, and all that stuff. That song, it used to play a lot in places like Butlins or Pontins, those sorts of dance routines where you're encouraged to dance along to the DJ's words and things like that. Yeah, it's very weird and it's very absurd, but it's basically about David moving on from his controlling mother after his controlling mother passes away. And his mother's played by Shearsmith. Who else would play Maureen other than him? And they do a fantastic job. They're both really awful, but they both really work off each other very well in this episode. And she is really funny. She is awful, but she's very hilarious. And of course, Shearsmith no one else could have done that part better than Shearsmith could. And I like the back and forth. It's really funny. There is a bit of a twist, and it's a twist that you don't quite expect, and it's really well done. And the biggest twist of this episode was I didn't expect to see Mr. Jelly, played by Shearsmith, in this episode either. I absolutely love Mr. Jelly as a character from Psychoville. He was one of the best parts about it for me. I mean, he definitely... Shearsmith does a very good job of playing this kind of, out of touch, kind of a bit of a bell end type children's presenter, like, someone who would quite happily indulge in a cigarette or kind of, a glass of sherry or something like that, or a glass of beer while he's entertaining the children with balloon animals or whatever. Like, he's that kind of terrible children's entertainer that you wouldn't want to invite to a children's party in real life. Like, he's one of those terrible people. But that's what makes him hilarious. That's what makes him so funny, is that he's so out of depth and he's so broken that you just you kind of feel sorry for him a little bit. And they do a very good job of fleshing him out in an episode of Psychoville, but in this particular episode, he's just got a cameo and he's funny. I mean, I miss Mr. Jelly, and Reece Shearsmith, if you happen to be watching, please make a spin-off of Mr. Jelly and his exploits, because I would love to see it. He's a great character. But yeah, that's Death Me Not Proud. It's a great episode. Highly check it out. Highly recommend it. And the third episode is called Love's Great Adventure. And this is a Christmas episode, and it is probably the most heartfelt Christmas episode I've probably ever watched involving a family in a very long time, because usually it is very grim, but it's not grim in the very stereotypical Inside Number 9 sense. It's actually really sad, and it's really heartbreaking to watch this family try to make a good Christmas for their family and their grandchild, but money's just not going anywhere. They don't really have any real money. They have to, get by on things that the husband just can get through benefits and things like that. And it's really sad to watch. It's really heartbreaking. But the performances really bring it home, especially from Pemberton and Debbie Rush, who plays his wife, Julia. And if you're a Coronation Street fan, she played Hannah. And she's basically she is the mother of Gary from Coronation Street. She's basically in a place his mum, and he was dating a girl called Izzy who was in a wheelchair. So yeah, she's a great actress, and she does a wonderful job as Julia in this role. She basically plays this she's very good at playing this very motherly type role, this one who if Judy Walters hadn't been cast as Molly Weasley, I think she would have happily, taken the part just as easily. I mean, she plays that character. She plays the character of Julia so well, this kind of motherly figure. She's this character who clearly wants to put a smile on everything, but she knows that when things go wrong and she, a character pays for something and she says, we haven't got the money, we can't do it because Christmas is coming up, and there's that. She's very good at playing that character who's just, had enough, and she just wants to say, oh, for God's sake, can you stop doing this now, kind of thing. And she does that very well and very spectacularly here. And the drama is actually very sad. There were actually a couple of moments during this episode where I actually nearly teared up, where I actually nearly cried, because it was so heartbreakingly realistic in showing this family's turmoil and the struggles that they have to deal with, especially a family member who kind of went off the rails, who comes back into their lives later on. And the whole entire format of the episode is done through the 31 days of, or sort of like the 25 days of Christmas, or the 12 days of Christmas, where every scene is kind of chopped up into segments, and they all kind of get revealed through this advent calendar, where the grandson opens up a door, and it would basically tell you what happened that day, that particular December. And it kind of stops at number 9. And then later on, the son, I think his name's Nigel, he shows up again, and he's opening the calendar with his son, and he wonders why number 9 wasn't opened. And then he opens it, and then we cut to a scene where it's actually, revealed there's a reason why that number 9 was never touched, because there was a very horrible incident that happened that day that none of the family members particularly want to remember. And it's such a heartbreaking episode, but it's so well acted, and the writing is just so well done. I think Steve Pemberton and Reece Shearsmith said that most of the script was improvised. Like, they had a basic structure of what the story was, who the characters were, and then certain lines and certain scenes, characters would just improvise. And that's a very good job. I mean, at least they have the script as kind of like a template to work off of, but then when characters would have certain scenes where it would kind of build on a particular idea or a particular theme, they would just improvise it off the spot. And there's so many great scenes in this episode, but this is one of the ones where it's very emotional, it's very harrowing, but there is a twist, but it's very kind of a minor twist, a twist that you don't really think about even when you hear it. And it's very well done. It's very beautifully acted. The writing, when there is writing, it really does feel like it's authentic and it just leaps off the page. And both Steve Pemberton and Reece Shearsmith have done a great job as writers on this one, but they also do a great job in the roles that they play too, where the dad is basically a struggling workman. He's basically a builder. He's basically struggling with his work. He's trying to get, the money, his pension and his money together so that he can support his family during this difficult period, which is always around the holidays. So it's a very great episode, but I would recommend, if you are watching this particular episode, always have a box of tissues handy if you feel like you're going to cry and the waterworks are going to come, because I definitely nearly got there a few times where I nearly almost cried, because the performances are just so well done. And it's a genuinely beautiful episode, it really is, and I do feel like it shows us a side of Christmas that a lot of people don't want to acknowledge, which is the very difficult money side, and the fact that certain people do struggle around the holiday. Even if you have a very well-paid job and a good income, there is always that difficulty that you can't get by for that particular series. And I really do, I know I'm probably going to get off on a tangent, but that's one of the things that I really kind of didn't like when I heard the premise of Christmas with the Cranks. Like, the idea of basically skipping Christmas and everyone kind of judging them for that was kind of a bit of I was kind of a bit hesitant about it when I first heard it, but then when I actually watched the film, it's actually one of my favourite films in regards to the fact that, these people are crazy, these people are mad, they're Christmas mad, but they kind of judge it because it's a comedy. It's a comedy, and I think I kind of let it off because it's a comedy, because it really does that job very well of re-showing these people who are so very passionate about Christmas, but it's a very commercial side of Christmas. And it's through, this particular episode with Tim Allen and Jamie Lee Curtis that they really do start to realise that, it's not about, just the gifts and the pageantry. It's about, spending time with the people that you love. And I guess that's great. But I just kind of, when I first heard about it, I thought, oh, really? They're kind of judging them for skipping Christmas? Why? Because it's probably the best decision. As a child, I probably thought, no, you can't have Christmas. But as an adult, I think, it's probably not such a bad idea, especially if you're struggling with cash. But yeah, it's one of those things where I just kept thinking to myself, yeah, that's fine. But yeah, this episode really does, push the boundaries of drama, and I think it's really good. So moving on very quickly, I spent too much time discussing this episode already, so we're moving on very quickly. And we're moving on to Misdirection, which is about a magician played by Reece Shearsmith who kills his mentor to steal his tricks. And he gets a prodigy played by Fionn Whitehead, who was in the film Dunkirk, the Christopher Nolan film Dunkirk. And he was also in excuse me, he was also in a interactive special for Black Mirror, Bandersnatch. He played Stefan, and he was very good in that too. So if you're a Black Mirror fan, you'll know who he is right away, but if you are a fan of Christopher Nolan, you'll know him as the guy from from Dunkirk. I forgot his name. I do apologise. But yes, this particular episode is really good. It kind of reminded me a bit of The Prestige in regards to the fact that it's basically about these magicians playing off each other and doing these magic tricks to basically perfect the art of deception and creating the ultimate illusion and basically creating a thriller type scenario between these two magicians who are very powerful, who are very influential, and they can be very twisted and very messed up. And Reece Shearsmith's character is completely utterly in the wrong, but I think Fionn Whitehead does some pretty morally questionable things in this episode too. He isn't completely out of the firing line in regards to laying any blame, because yes, he's doing this for a specific reason, but does it really condone murder? And I genuinely am asking this question, like, do you think Fionn Whitehead's character was in the right to potentially kill Shearsmith's wife? Do you think that's actually a genuine thing that he's justified in doing, especially after what Shearsmith is revealed to have done? Because I genuinely am intrigued, because I do think he is justified to get a bit of payback on Shearsmith, but I feel Shearsmith's character, but I do feel like him killing someone who had nothing to do with that really just kind of felt like a morally grey area to me. I might be completely wrong, but I do genuinely want to hear your thoughts in the comments if you do have an alternative opinion and all that, because I am genuinely intrigued, because it is a very morally grey episode where no one seems to be in the right or in the wrong. It just kind of feels like there's this wonderful in between of both of these things. So yeah, it's a good episode with a great twist that I probably have spoiled, because I do genuinely think that this is one of those ones where I feel like it merits discussion a little bit. And of course, with other episodes like, The Referee's a Wanker and, even Love's Great Adventure, there are aspects of those particular episodes which we could discuss and talk about in much more greater depth. But I do think it's a great episode overall. It's a fantastic episode. Really great, building up these tensions and these great switcheroos and all these other things. But yeah, it's a great episode. It's called Misdirection, and moving on to Thinking Out Loud. And this episode is pretty damn interesting, because to me it basically does a first draft version of what Wise Owl did. And I kind of do feel like this is one of the more divisive episodes, because yes, it's a good format, these multiple cameras and thus multiple perspectives storyline, but I do feel like this is an episode where I'm kind of half and half on it, where I do feel like it's a good idea, especially when it comes to the twist, but I kind of feel like the ending, kind of explaining it, really is one of the big takeaways for me, where I do feel like it kind of takes me out of it, because it's explaining the twist, and I don't really think a twist should be explained. Usually the audience, they should give the audience enough credit to think, okay, we get why this could be the case, and we need to see throughout the course of the episode why that was. But I think, and here's where it's quite divisive for me, because I do think they set it up very well to the point where you could come to your own conclusions. But I feel like that reveal where the person at the end was explaining everything, it just kind of felt like the psychiatrist scene in Psycho, where the psychiatrist just comes in and basically just explains Norman Bates' psychosis, and he doesn't really leave enough to the imagination of the audience. But again, it's all down to the context of when it was made in the case of Psycho, whereas in the case of this, it kind of just felt like, oh, okay, it's okay, I can take it or leave the explanation, but I just feel like the episode did such a good job of building up those elements with all the different characters being introduced and seeing into their lives, that it just kind of felt like when the explanation came, it just kind of felt like you're not giving me enough credit. Like I could have, pieced together those things, and it could merit, further insight into repeat viewings. But it is a good episode. I do think it is a fantastic idea to do it through multiple perspectives, and every single one has a sort of every single one of these characters are filmed in some way. And I like the twist, and I like the fact that Phil Davis is in this, because I'm a huge fan of the TV series Whitechapel, and I'm so glad that Steve Pemberton and Mr. Phil Davis was able to reunite for this episode. And it's always nice to see him in a role where he kind of is allowed to let go a little bit and be a little bit more different than some of the other characters that he's played, because he's a very tough as nails type guy in Whitechapel. But he's a guy who has the heart of gold, and he'll clearly, jump in front of a bullet for you if you kind of, get to know him long enough, and he gets to know you long enough, and he builds trust with you, which is really great. But then he plays a character in this which is kind of half and half. He's very sweet and very lovely initially, but then the twist happens, and you're just going to think, oh, well, that's a great reversal. But I really do like this episode, despite the fact that I do have some gripes with the ending, with them kind of, explaining the twist, because that kind of felt like the Psycho thing again. But again, you can kind of rule out Psycho with them saying that, oh, it was a different time period when that was released, whereas this, it can kind of be a little bit either or. But I still liked the idea, and I liked the twist, and I felt like the performances were really great. Every single one of them did such a great job, and I felt like it really added to the overall story, and it really made me unsettled a lot of the time. There were all really great scenes. I mean, Steve Pemberton did a really great job as this death row inmate who committed these horrific crimes, these horrific murders. He did a great job. I like his southern accent. A lot of people didn't like it, but I really did. I really felt like it was really authentic, and it really kind of added a certain layer of uncomfortableness to his character a little bit, and he did a very good job with that. And I don't really want to discuss the ending, but I will talk about it a little bit more when I get to my Wise Owl review, and why I think Wise Owl did this particular ending much better. But yeah, I really enjoy this episode. It's a great episode. It's not really my favourite one, but I do think it's a good one. And that was Thinking Out Loud. The next one, and it's the sixth one, it is called The Stakeout. And it follows two cops, P.C. Thompson, played by Pemberton, and SPC Varney, played by Shearsmith. Sorry, I butchered that there. And they basically have a rookie and superior kind of setup. It feels kind of like, at first, you're watching kind of like a Steve Pemberton and Shearsmith does Training Day kind of feel, where one of them's a bit rogue, one of them's a superior, but he's a bit rogue, and he's a bit of a dodgy cop, or a bit of a crooked cop, where he kind of does all these crazy things. But then throughout the episode, you see various things that kind of make you think, oh, okay, this happened, and this is why he is the way he is. He wants to figure out what's going on here involving this incident with this particular individual that died, his previous partner that died. And at first you think it's going to be a straightforward cop drama, and you think, oh, this is a bit of a spoiler at the very start by killing off one of the main characters and showing a close-up of them in a bloodied state. But then you kind of peel back the curtain, and then you realise, oh yeah, I recognise the pattern now. This is always the case with Inside Number 9. They always have a special episode as the 6th episode. And as far as cop dramas go, this was actually a pretty good one, especially a double act type episode. It was pretty good. And again, the scenes where Shearsmith and Pemberton are working off each other as these two cops is actually really good, and I love the fortunately, unfortunately game, where they basically say, fortunately, I got a promotion at work. Unfortunately, it means I have to work Saturdays, meaning that my weekend's completely gone. That kind of game. I love that dynamic, and I love how very slowly Pemberton, Shearsmith's character, is very slowly starting to get him into a series of where he's comfortable, where he's playing a game where we all should be familiar, and then he's very slowly using the setup and the rules of that particular game to open up that particular character, Thompson's character, Shearsmith's character, as they continue on playing. So he starts to realise, why are we out here in this cemetery? Why are we out here doing this stuff? What's going on here? What are you not telling me? And I love that. It's a nice twist to that particular formula. And it has a twist, which I genuinely wasn't expecting, but it was genuinely very well set up as well. There's a lot of clues throughout the episode that could hint at the twist, which I really loved. And Shearsmith and Pemberton are really great writers. I mean, I mean, they're such wonderful writers. They're great performers anyway with their characters. But I feel like they do a very good job in the writing department where they can really create these very amazing twists and these amazing storylines overall. And this one was and this has been the Stakeout, and it's a pretty good episode. It's a great way of capping off the entirety of series 5, and I'm looking forward to going further on. I'm gonna make the live episode, the episode deadline, a part of a Halloween special, since we're not long before October comes round. I thought I'd do a special video on Deadline to give my thoughts on that. Other than that, I'm going to be proceeding with Series 6 and Series 7 as per usual. Hopefully, I will be getting to Series 6 later on today, because I'll be doing my 2-video quota, and I'll do Series 7. And I'm looking forward to Series 7 because it has not one, but 2 of my favourite episodes in it. And I really do love this particular series because it really does, go into a lot more darker territory. And it's really kind of, interesting. And I have 2 favourite episodes, one of which is Wise Owl, and the second one, I know it's not a very popular one, but I liked Nine Lives Cat. It was such a great episode, a great twist. But I have more favourites in Series 7 than I have in any other season of this show. But I do love every episode of this particular season. But yeah, I'm going to be doing a recording probably straight after this. I'll be doing Series 6. Because I really am on a bit of a creative boom right now. I'm a bit on a video making creative boom right now. So I'm going to be uploading this, and then I will be going straight on to recording my breakdown of Series 6. And hopefully see you there very soon. Have a great day. Take care.